Thanks everybody for joining us. My name is Cord Bucher. I'm the Deputy Director of Youth Development Oregon. We'll get started here in a couple of minutes, but if you would, please make sure that your microphone is muted and open up the chat function if it's not open already. We'll be using that for folks to be able to submit questions during the presentation. We'll get started in just a moment. We're letting folks come in. We're getting attendees joining us here now, so just hang tight. Thank you. I see some more folks coming in. Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Cord Bucher. I'm the Deputy Director of Youth Development Oregon, and we'll be getting started in just a moment. If you would please mute your microphone and open up the chat box, chat function, and you'll be able to submit questions, and we'll be sending out information through the chat if necessary as well. All right, well, I'll go ahead and get us started. And I'll start by saying this meeting is being recorded. So we'll be sharing this on our website following this information session. So that's going to be made available to folks. So if you get here late, you'll be able to catch up on anything you missed. My name is Cord Bucher. I'm the Deputy Director for Youth Development Oregon. Thanks for joining us this morning for the informational session on the 2026-27 Safe Communities for Youth Grant. This is a pre-application conference, and we'll be sharing information about the RFA that is currently open. Can we go to the next slide, please? I'm going to start by sharing the names of the grant staff, as well as some other folks who support our grant work. And there at the top left, we've got our director, Brian Detman, named, and Director Detman is here. So if you'd like to say a few words to folks, Brian, please do.
Thanks so much, Cord. Can you hear me, Cord?
Coming through.
It's fine. Great. Hey, I'm just signing on real quick to say thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. Exciting and maybe a little bittersweet to have a grant opportunity. Exciting to have a grant opportunity open in this time of year, but also given the continued need to think about how we have resources to keep youth safe and keep families and communities safe is, also not, I'm sure, without its challenges and difficulties. Nonetheless, we're happy that those of you who are here are able to join and listen and hopefully get some good information as it relates to this grant opportunity. And hope also and wish folks had a great July 4th weekend and enjoying summer in whatever way that you can. And finally, just again, a really deep appreciation to our staff, to Cord, to you, and to Abraham, and to Tanasia and Melissa, and Jared Shaw, and other members of our grants team who've, I know, put a lot of time and effort into this grant opportunity. Paul Sell as well. I know you're going to give some other folks maybe the opportunity to say something, or at the very least, you're going to say their names. But just shout out to the team for all the work on this. So have a great information session this morning. Maybe I'll kind of stay unmuted and off camera here for a little bit, but thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Brian. So Paul Sell, the YDO Associate Director who leads the grant youth success team, is actually on the road today, so he's not able to join us. Normally he'd be doing what I'm doing, and so I'm here in his stead. Jared Shaw and Abraham Magana you'll be hearing from in this presentation. Also acknowledging Sally Deck, Molly Burns, Bill Hansel, also part of this team. Bill's here in attendance, and the other folks might be dropping in. I want to thank Tanasia Bishop, who is going to be operating slides, is managing the the waiting room and just keeping things running smoothly, and Melissa Gallardo as well to assist us with the production today. So, if we can go to the next slide, I would like to introduce the single point of contact, Bethany Moreland. So, during this RFA, the single point of contact is the person that you should direct all questions and communication to. And Bethany, if you'd like to say a few words, please do.
Thank you, Cord. Again, I'm Bethany Moreland. I'm part of the OD procurement team, and I work alongside YDO to facilitate a lot of their grants. I just want to call it specifically that the statements and responses to questions, if any, that are addressed during the presentation are not considered binding until they're published officially in our official question and answer document as a part of this RFA. If at any point during the process you have questions, comments, whatever, questions about the RFA, please do email those directly to me. The RFA stipulates that all of that has to go through me and cannot be sent to any of the YDO team. So you can find my contact information right at the start of the RFA, as well as obviously on these slides if we've not already been in communication because of previous work with our other RFAs. I think that's about it. Thanks so much, Cord.
Thanks, Bethany. Go to the next slide, please. I'll tell you what we're going to cover today. In a second, we'll do some housekeeping. I'll explain a little bit about how this information session will work. You may submit questions in the chat. All those are going to be recorded and all those will be collected. We will ask that folks stay on mute, and we're just going to present the information today. We'll give you an agency and grant overview. We'll talk about the RFA scope, exactly the scope of work of the Safe Communities for Youth grant. We'll talk about the application and evaluation process, share some details on how to apply the system that we use for our applications, and then we'll talk about the timeline. If you can go to the next slide, please. Again, please stay muted. You can enter questions in the chat. We are going to record all the questions, but our responses will be published in a question and answer document on our website. We may answer questions during the presentation. However, the responses provided are considered non-binding until we publish the official question and answer document. In the RFA, we have 2 publication dates. We'll do an initial posting of questions and answers on or around Thursday, July 9th. And we'll do a final publication of questions and answers on July 20th. The final deadline for submitting questions is Tuesday, July 14th. And outside of this meeting where you may submit questions in the chat, again, please direct any questions to Bethany at her email address that was just shared. One thing I'll note is for folks who've been to one of our info sessions before, in the past, we've sometimes tried to answer questions live during the meeting. Based on feedback, we're not going to be doing that today. Sometimes we get a lot of questions. It's hard to track them. It can be challenging to track what's been answered and who is answering the question. And so for just clarity and simplicity, we're just going to collect questions. Now, if it's a very simple question, if the answer is in the presentation, I might note that. But generally speaking, we're not going to be in the chat responding. However, this is a great opportunity for you to ask questions. Any question you have, questions specifically about the presentation, and we'll be capturing all that information and working on responses to be published, hopefully by the end of the week.
Cord, may I interject real quick about the
Yes,
questions?
please.
I just want to call it specifically that if you're reaching out to me with questions, please do so via email. Don't call me. I have to have a record of that conversation, of the questions that you asked, so that everybody's getting the same information in the question and answer document. So I will not respond to questions via phone call. I will request that you send it to me via email. So please just go ahead and do so. And then there's a question and answer section within the RFA that stipulates the format that you need to use. Please review that prior to emailing me so that you cover all of the bases and are following the parameters set out in the RFA. Thanks, Cord.
Yeah, thank you, Bethany. I think an important thing to know is that any question we get asked is part of the public process. So if you see someone else ask a question you will get to see the answer to that question. We'll answer everything and make that available to everyone who wants to see the Q&A. Can we go to the next slide, please? I'm going to share our mission and vision. Hopefully, most of you know a bit about Youth Development Oregon. Our mission is to align systems and invest in communities to ensure equitable and effective services for youth ages 6 through 24. Throughout Oregon and tribal nations, we support educational and career success, disrupt youth crime and violence, and affirm youth strengths and safety. And our vision is that all of Oregon's youth have the opportunity to thrive and achieve their full potential. We have an equity statement as well, which is due to Oregon's history of systemic racism and with an understanding that we continue to live with systems that perpetuate inequity. YDO works to eliminate the impact of these injustices on young people. Next slide, please. All right. Today we're talking about the Safe Communities for Youth grant. We wanted to start just by putting this grant in the context. We have a number of other grants that are currently out and active. As noted earlier, we're a little late launching this one. During the earlier part of this biennium, there was potential for budget reductions, and because we had not launched it yet. Once we knew our budget was not going to be reduced, we got things together, put this RFA together, and have recently launched it. So it is, unlike the other grants here, not a 2-year grant. This grant runs for a shorter cycle. It's really the 26-27 Safe Communities for Youth grant. But in terms of what this grant does, you can see it here in the context of our other youth grants portfolio grants. So the Safe Communities for Youth grant primarily serves ages 16 through 24. It is focused on the older age range in our population, and it is for youth impacted by community violence. Next slide, please. The Safe Communities for Youth grant supports community-based efforts with attention to youth needs, proven practices, applicant experience, and capacity to serve highly vulnerable youth in their community at imminent risk of being a victim of gun violence or violent physical harm. The primary age range, as mentioned, is 16 through 24. I wanted to note a couple of things. Again, this RFA scope, we'll talk a bit more about this, but this is a very focused grant with a very specific purpose, a bit different from some of our other grants, which have broader permitted uses and applicability. For the age range, the RFA should be written to this primary age range. Is a need for supports or interventions to start earlier, say ages below 16. That's something that you may address with your grant manager should your grant be awarded. But proposals should be made for services that are really focused on the primary age range here. Next slide, please. I wanted to share a definition. This is in the RFA, but we really want to give you some context around what this grant is meant to do. It is, as noted, focused on community violence. And here we've got a definition. Community violence means acts of interpersonal violence committed in public spaces by individuals who may or may not be related to the victim. It includes incidents such as shootings, stabbings, assaults, and other violent acts that often result in physical and emotional harm to individuals, families, and communities. I also have here a piece of our statute. So this grant is really meant to address a specific line within the statutes that define what the Youth Development Council is responsible for. So the Youth Development Council is responsible for prioritizing funding for services related to several things, and one of them in this ORS listed here is the prevention of and intervention in community violence and gang activity, with an emphasis on a public health approach and community-based programs. So this grant, again, is really designed to help fulfill this statutory obligation to address community violence. Next slide, please. The Safe Communities for Youth goals are to identify youth in their community at imminent risk of being a victim of violent physical harm or gun violence, to interrupt and or reduce violent retaliatory attacks against youth at imminent risk of violence, to reduce the likelihood of youth being victims of violent acts causing bodily injury or death, and to provide intensive culturally appropriate services addressing youth safety, trauma, mental health, and well-being by service providers with knowledge and expertise in supporting youth affected by community violence. The next slide, please. Making sure I'm tracking in my notes as well. So here, a note on the application limit. So This is a fairly small award. In total, there are $880,000 approximately available. So there's an application limit of one application per applicant or organization. I believe that's defined in more depth in the RFA. Um, and I would just note that unlike some of our other grants, there are no regional awards. There's not a regional award process in the Safe Communities for Youth grant. And a major reason for that is that given the total amount of funding available, we anticipate making 5 to 7 awards. Normally, we use a map that has 11 regions, so we don't have enough funding to actually fund a grant in every region of the state. And given the very specific targeted purpose of this grant, we're simply going to be using the sort of standard ranked application scoring to make awards. One other thing I want to note here, we have another grant some folks may be familiar with, the East Multnomah Outreach Prevention Intervention Grant, which is actually something that we award to the city of Gresham. And the city of Gresham, in turn, makes grants to a number of organizations working throughout East Metro. Um, Emopi has very similar purposes and goals to this grant. And so we want to really make sure that folks understand that if they are a recipient of an Emopi grant, you're not eligible to be awarded funds from the Safe Communities for Youth grant unless what you're proposing to do in this application is different in terms of services or who is served than what you are doing currently for Emopi. So, if your organization is a recipient of MOP funds, you'll just want to pay very close attention to this restriction. There is more information in the RFA in section 1.3, but we want to call that out so people are aware that we're going to be paying close attention to that and want to make sure that whatever you're proposing is very distinct from whatever you may be doing if you are an MOP grantee. If you're not an MOP grantee, then that does not apply to you. The award amounts range is 100,000 to 150. So the minimum proposed award would be 100,000. The maximum you may request is $150,000. And the next slide, please. All right. At this point, I am going to turn it over to Abraham Magana to talk about the RFA scope.
Thank you, Cord. Yes, as Cord said, I'm Abraham Magana. I'm a grant manager and operations analyst with YDO, and I'll be covering the scope here in a bit. So to the next slide, please. Applicant eligibility. To be eligible, the project that has to be operational, currently operational, in other words, it has to be at the time of application. If we were to show up, services would be being delivered right now to youth. You have to be registered with Oregon Secretary of State Business Registry, and services have to be delivered in Oregon. To the right there, eligible entities, have to be one of 9 federally recognized tribes in Oregon, a nonprofit organization, a faith-based organization, a public benefit company, a mutual benefit company. It can be an Oregon Community College, ESD, school district or public school, and also a county, city, or a county, city, or county or city governmental entity in Oregon. Next slide, please. Scope of activities. You'll see here there's 2 different areas, if you will, or focuses. First one is identification and engagement services. So these are strategies used to identify and actively engage youth at imminent risk of involvement in gun violence or a violent crime. These services are primarily associated with street-level outreach or field-based outreach using credible messengers. Services should be active and currently operational at time of application submission, and all services and activities should be individualized, culturally competent, and rooted in harm reduction and healing-centered engagement. Something I also want to mention, through this presentation, you might see some things that are capitalized. For example, youth at imminent risk or credible messengers. If you look in the RFA, those are defined in the RFA, just to let you know. The other focus area is comprehensive support and transition services, which is the delivery or coordination of supportive, trauma-informed, and rehabilitative services designed to assist participants in transitioning from unsafe, harmful cycles of violence toward a safer, more secure, and healthier life. You served, many of whom are gang impacted and have experienced chronic exposure to violence, will receive culturally responsive services tailored to their individual needs. Next slide. So I'm going to go a little bit kind of to give some context on this focus areas. So for identification and engagement services, One aspect is street level outreach that would occur in neighborhoods or communities with high rates of gun violence and gang impacted communities. We're looking for relationships or to have the relationships with local families, community leaders, and previous victims of violence, and also knowledge of behavioral indicators and community intelligence to identify emerging risks or disputes. So someone who's embedded kind of in the community is what we're looking for. Then another area is real-time violence interruption and crisis mediation. So we need the ability to provide immediate on-the-ground strategic deployment of trained community members in the aftermath of a violent incident, be able to prevent retaliation, de-escalate potential conflicts, and support victims, and also build relationships and support kind of long-term behavioral change, right? So those are two kind of to give you context on what we mean by identification and engagement services. Next slide, please. The other focus area is comprehensive support and transition services. So this is trauma-informed health support. So provide referrals or services with mental health professionals, culturally relevant and appropriate peer and community healing supports, and if needed, substance use recovery services as well. Then we have life coaching and case management, working with youth, providing needs assessment, success plans, goals, safety plans, overall safety, minimum weekly check-ins, and then supports and navigating systems based on the needs. Then also 24/7 availability for crisis response and also providing crisis relocation. Next slide. This, I think, goes to my colleague, Jared. I think you'll be covering this.
Oh, I think I'm might be jumping in the next couple. Is this? But I can take over here. All right. So yes, for reporting, there will be three elements to reporting. One is submitting a quarterly narrative report. One is submitting a quarterly expenditure report, and one will be submitting a quarterly data report. Next slide, please. And so these are the data reporting elements that you will be submitting. So you've got here in attachment E of the RFA, you'll see what those data reporting requirements are. And then so we've got certain data that you'll be submitting for identification and engagement services, which is essentially monthly numbers of contacts, rapid response incidents, victims, fatalities, and so on and so forth. And then for comprehensive support and transition services, those are the elements listed below that you will be required to collect. So submitting a youth ID number, race, ethnicity, date of birth, dates of service, yes or no responses for if you've conducted a needs assessment, history of victimization, therapy and counseling services, if youth have been re-victimized, or unfortunately, if there's a fatality. And then essentially their start and end statuses of education status and employment status. Next slide, please.
Hey, before we jump past that slide, something I wanted to note because it doesn't say it on this slide, but I think it's a good distinction to call out. For folks who have been who maybe are current recipients of our other grants, and if you're doing data reporting, we are for most of our grants now collecting personally identifiable information. So that would include a youth's first and last name, as well as date of birth, race, ethnicity. We are not asking for names to be collected within this grant. So a youth ID number, would be a number that you would assign to you so that you can know who you are reporting on. But we are not asking you to provide personally identifiable information on the youth served in this grant for reasons that are probably apparent. And then, I think the other distinction here is that in the identification and engagement services, you're providing essentially aggregate data, overall numbers. Whereas for the comprehensive support and transition services, we're asking you for individual level data, though not personally identifiable information on the participants. Just wanted to say that. Am I correct in what I've just said, Abraham?
Yes, you are correct. And I was also going to add something as well in regards
Please
to
do.
two focus areas. You can do Both of them together, combination, you can just do identification engagement services, or you can just focus on the comprehensive support and transition services, or again, like I said, both areas are focuses.
All right, thanks, Jared.
Thank you both. Next slide, please. All right, this is where I thought I was taking over. So I officially introduce myself as Jared Shaw, Grant Manager and Workforce Analyst at YDO. And I will be talking a bit more about the application and evaluation for this grant. Next slide, please. So here is a slide where you'll essentially see all of the required elements to submit a complete application. So you'll see here what the element is on the left, where you will encounter that. Most of this will be you'll see SMA here, that stands for SurveyMonkey Apply, which is our application portal. And Abraham will talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. You'll see a word limit if there is one, and then where you can find more information about this in the RFA and the attachments. So the elements to complete a full application, one will be this application information and certification section, where you'll essentially be providing some information on who you are as the applicant and certifying that you are able to complete the required components of this grant. You'll submit a project title, a short executive summary, about 50 words or less, about what the project is, sort of just the elevator speech for that. An organization description of 300 words or less. There will be a project scope section, which will just appear as checkboxes, and that is to confirm that you are able to provide either the identification and engagement services or the comprehensive support services, really just ensuring that you are falling within the scope of this grant and that you are able to meet those requirements. Then you'll see the application narrative section, and you'll see that this says scored. So all of the components up to this point are unscored by evaluators. That's kind of background information for us and to make sure that you are meeting the minimum requirements of falling into scope within this grant. The application narrative will be 4 questions that we'll talk about in a moment, and those will be evaluated by a group of evaluators. And then you'll submit a budget as well. And you can see all of those attachment or the section numbers and attachments on the right, where you'll find additional information about those.
Hey, Jared, quick
Yes.
question. I realized that I don't know if this was clear when we previously in other RFAs, but the unscored elements, the project title, the executive summary, and the organization description, that is available to the evaluators when they're.
That I might defer to Abraham on that, on what
I
is
think the
visible to
last
evaluators.
cycle it wasn't. It was they only saw the questions, and I think it's built the same way based on the same model, if I recall correctly.
Bethany, do you know? Because I thought that those elements were made available.
Off the top of my head, I don't recall, but we can definitely, Abe and I can look into that and hopefully
That's a
find
good
an answer
question.
before the
Just
end
a
of this, yeah, before the end of this
Yeah.
presentation.
Bill, I see you came off. You're on camera now. Do you? I feel like I know there's someone who I've talked extensively with this about with this. And we'll check and we'll clarify that because I feel like this question came up in the past is do the reviewers get to see what the summary of the project is and the organizational information? Is that context provided? I guess I'm not certain that it is, and we will clarify whether it is because I think that is important for us to let folks know that even if something isn't scored, do reviewers get to see it, and we can put that in the Q&A so folks know for sure.
Thanks, Court.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Next slide, please. All right, this is a template for the budget that you'll submit. Again, the budget will be unscored, but this shows the categories where you'll input your budget. Attachment D shows what is allowable within those categories. So if you look at attachment D, you'll see a description of appropriate expenses that you can include within each of those. Admin costs, just so you're aware, the maximum for administrative costs is 15% of your total budget or your federally approved indirect rate, whichever is higher. And then also to note, as you submit your budget, if you have any subcontracts or subawards for this project that exceed $10,000, those must be listed when you submit the budget. Next slide, please. Going back to the evaluation items that will be scored by evaluators, these are the items that you'll submit. So one will be a question about project operations. That's essentially, what are you doing with your project? Kind of background information there. You'll see the word limit, 400 words, and then 10 points. There'll be a question about project youth population in the service area, 600 words, 30 points. Project services and activities, and then project equity and access for a total of 100 points. And again, RFA section 4.3 goes into those questions. You'll see each one has sub-bullets, so make sure you read those questions very carefully. Next slide, please. And then this just tells you to please clearly describe what you will do and the youth that you'll be serving. Please make sure that you answer all of those items and sub-items in those questions and demonstrate a firm commitment to undertake what you will do if you're awarded the grant. So, make sure that you are describing about what you will do, not what you hope to do or what you think you might do. Just this is, make sure that you are committing to undertaking the project that you are submitting. Next slide, please. All right, I think I'm passing it back to Abraham to talk about how to apply in SurveyMonkey Apply.
Yes, that's what I will be covering next slide, please. So we use a platform called SM Apply for our grant. There's a website to find it. That's also where you'll apply for the grant and will also be used for reporting. Right? If you have some trouble, technical issues, we also have a website where you can go and kind of basically seek help for any of the issues around, oh, I need to reset my password, for example, or I forgot my username, what have you. But there's a frequently asked questions page that'll help you with that. Next slide, please. So when you do go to that website, you'll come to a screen something like this, especially if you're a person who's never applied for an organization that's never applied for our grants. Right? You'll follow that link and then you'll see a page similar to this. As a matter of fact, except right now you'll see the current RFA there on the cover instead of that line which says Grant Applications Reporting Portal. What you'll do if you're a new grantee, you'll register. If you've applied for grants with us in the past, you might already still have an account and you can just log in. But you either select that green button or the login option on top right there. Next slide, please. And you'll come to a screen and there'll be a rectangle, right? And you'll have to click Start to apply. Once you've set up your account, each little rectangle like that here, for example, this is an example of a re-engagement grant. Yours will look a little different. It'll say, I think it'll say 2627 SCFY, and then with a randomized set of numbers. So you go ahead and click Start. And then next slide. And you'll come to a screen similar to this. And if you look there, it says your tasks. Each one of those tasks represents a section in the RFA that you'll fill out, right? So for example, there's some basic applicant information and eligibility, et cetera, et cetera. And what you do, you kind of just go through the tasks in order, right? And every time you complete a task, it's interesting. So if you look, there's little circles, kind of like a dotted circle there, or a dash circle next to each task. And as you begin filling out each task, if you complete it, a check mark will appear next to that task. If you're starting the task, it'll be like a half green circle is what will appear, right? And know that you can always go back to the task to edit it. But I highly recommend you go in order first, because you can very easily go back, or I'm sorry, make a mistake and not know, or they said, oh, wait, I need to change something, but you have a checkbox, so you think you already did it, right? Because once it gets completed, and I'll show you a little bit later, that check mark appears. Next.
Hey, Abe, before you move to the next slide, well, I think that this is reviews some of the material in this presentation from our last information session. This has a re-engagement opportunity application. So just want to let folks know that for example, a letter of re-engagement partnership may not be part of the Safe Communities for Youth application. So I don't want anyone to get concerned if you've already gone in and you've looked and you're not seeing the same things, it's just because we've used some materials in this presentation from another grant. So just wanted to clarify that because I read that I was like, I don't believe we're requiring that particular thing in this grant. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt, for clarifying. Yes, no partnership letters. Next slide. Something that's important, as you see there, the check marks. So this applicant completed all the tasks right there. And we stress this a lot in the sense that because every task has a green complete button. Every single task, once you complete it, you click the green and it brings you back to this screen, right? But to officially submit your grant application, you have to hit that green submit button, right? And you'll get a confirmation email, right? Shortly after you hit that submit button. If for some reason you don't get it, contact Bethany ASAP, and please don't wait till the last day to submit this grant, right? Please try to make some time. Next slide. The RFA schedule. Is this back to you, Cord?
I think this is back to me, actually.
Oh, okay. Back to you, Jared.
All right. Next slide, please. So this is just an overview of the schedule. Again, you'll see this in section 1.4 of the RFA. And there is an addendum where we have made an addition. You'll see that there are now two dates for releases for questions. We'll be answering those on July 9th and July 20th. That was the addition there. It was originally just July 20th, but essentially pre-application conference today. All questions are due to Bethany by next Tuesday, July 14th at 4 p.m. We will be having those two iterations of question and answers being released, one this Thursday, July 9th for initial questions that have come in, and then for all other questions, Monday, July 20th. And then closing of applications will be the end of the month, July 30th by 4 p.m. As Abraham said, please do not wait. There sometimes are, people will run into computer glitches on the last day, so please make sure that you get into the system, you know how it works, and you are confident that you're able to submit that application. And then we plan to issue a notice of intent to award about 1 month after that, about Friday, August 28th. And then after that, you will have 7 calendar days to appeal an award. Yes, so that is the calendar there. Right. I think that's it, and I'll pass it back to either Abraham or Cord to close things out.
Record.
Oh, Abe and Jared, thank you so much for covering all of that. In the chat, I just shared a link to the Safe Communities for Youth RFA page on our website. We will post this recording if you want to go back and review anything. We'll have a link to this probably by sometime tomorrow. Any additional information about the RFA or addendums get posted here as well. And of course, all the RFA materials can be accessed on this page. If you have other questions, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. If there's anything you wanted to ask for clarification on in today's presentation or anything else, you may do so now. Otherwise, if you have questions, please email Bethany Moreland at bethany.moreland@ode.oregon.gov. You've got her address there on the screen. And with that, we really appreciate everyone coming to learn about this grant. And we'll be posting responses to the initial questions we've gotten up until probably through this meeting through today. We'll be posting the first set of questions and answers by the end of this week. Thanks for coming.